All right, let's get started. So, one new PR this week. This is from Niha. This is ones we're having a lot of discussion about, and I think we're going to try to discuss this for our primary discussion topic this week. But the the uh, the RFC here is to make the BlueFS alloc size default to be the same as the BlueStorm min alloc size, and to set that to 16K, which is the current uh, default SSD min alloc size in BlueStore. Well, at least for SSDs, that would be what we'd set for default. I suspect we'd still set it to 64K by default for hard drives, but we can talk about that more later on. So let's see. There's a couple of PRs that closed this week. Last week we merged the new version of RocksDB to master, which allowed for us to enable RocksDB ARM range. So Sage issued a PR for that as soon as the other PR merged, and that also got merged. Let's see, there's this reduce wake-ups from Majian Peng for BlueStore, probably a minor performance improvement, I imagine, from that. My cache refactor PR finally merged, made it through all testing. That is a big performance gain for BlueStore. We're looking at like a 25 to 30% small random write performance gain. And it helps in other cases too. So I'm hoping that should be a fairly obvious improvement, especially if we decide to backport that to Nautilus. So yeah, that hopefully will do everything from improving end user performance to making our tests in Toothology run faster. Let's see, the last one, and then the second one here that closed for me was this trim cache on add that actually got folded into the above one, so that was just closed. All right, updated. Eric's got a RGW small efficiency gain PR that got put in testing, it looks like, so it'll probably merge sometime this week or next week. Adam's objection sustained PR got another update. So I imagine that's just kind of chugging along, running through testing, working its way to being merged.
It is, I hope, almost ready to be merged. I think I've killed the last bug, but I have slight Toothology problems, and as soon as those are resolved, I will run it through testing and see what happens. And also, I am actively reviews.
All right. Fantastic. I hear you, Adam. I have Toothology problems sometimes too.
There are two branches. One is the objection sustained, which is RGW specifically. The I object is just the objector and neo-rados, or whatever you want to call it, patches. So if someone doesn't care about RGW, they can just review the I object branch. I'll have to double check and make sure that one is up to date.
Okay, cool.
There's some people on this call that might want to be able to do that. I know I don't see Jason here. He's one of the people we hope to get a review from because of his knowledge of the Librados interfaces, C++ interface. But
did you add him as a reviewer yet?
I did, but he has not responded. I should ask him nicely on IRC at some point recently.
So yeah, this objector work is on the agenda for the next CDM. So Adam, talking about that, I think we should make sure that Jason can join and discuss it there, and then follow up with review after that.
That sounds good to me.
Cool. And then the last one we've got here is from Eric as well, the multi-site sync fairness PR. I think that got updated again. Eric's not here. Casey, is that moving along?
It's moving along, yeah. I think he's still in the debugging phase and cleanup stuff, but yeah, making progress.
Cool. Okay, and we've got a couple here that don't have movement this week, but are still very important. Other atoms, sharding work in Blue Store. So that is I think was reviewed by a couple of people, and there's a couple of changes that I think Adam's working on. He also has a PR on top of it that takes my work from 27705 for avoiding double caching of Blue Store O nodes and applying it to his work. There was a question, Brett had a question for me last week about whether or not kind of what's going to happen in terms of backporting, and if we can get the sharding work backported to Nautilus, and then this PR backporting to Nautilus. And he raised the possibility of my PR maybe being easier to backport if we just say that then you need to redeploy the OSD if you enable that change, which would work. Otherwise, it's an on-disk format change, and we need something to convert an OSD. But we could just say that enabling it requires an OSD rebuild. So that would be kind of a fallback option if the sharding work ends up taking too long to be able to backport it. But anyway, that's there. Let's see, we've got Igor's work here for the RocksDB hint level for SSD files. I don't know what the plan is for that, but it looks like it's still a work in progress and has the RFC tag there. So I guess he's still working on it. Oh, Igor, you're here. Can you talk about that a little bit? I don't know if you're trying to talk or not, but your microphone is muted.
Yeah, sorry. So the idea is to change the way we are getting level hint from RocksDB. Instead of implicit hint, make RocksDB to provide this hint explicitly. I'm trying to do that with some issues so far, so still in progress here.
And that will require a change to RocksDB, right?
Right.
So we just added 6.1.2 to master, and there was a new PR that came out to backport that to Nautilus. Do you think, is this something that we'd be able to get done by Octopus, do you think?
Maybe, but well, still too early to say something.
Okay.
In term, just randomly, in terms of the difficulty, is there an intrinsic difficulty with this? Does anyone know of intrinsic difficulty with this version of RocksDB and Luminous?
I don't know of any intrinsic difficulty with it. It's just a question of whether or not we want to go all the way back to Luminous with a brand new release, or if we want to hedge our bets and keep Luminous at its current release, or switch it to the one that Nautilus has been running on since we've got a lot of in the field testing with it.
Well, yeah, I know we're interested in getting the RM range stuff to Luminous if at all possible.
And getting that into analysis is the first step there.
Josh, would you feel comfortable with backporting 6.1.2 all the way to Luminous potentially?
Potentially, I think not immediately, but like letting it bake in the analysis a bit, I think would make sense. And we can look at backporting Luminous after that.
I'd also be in favor of having a release with the new RocksDB version in Nautilus, see what the user feedback is then, and then take some decisions.
Sounds good.
Cool. I'm just going to quickly add in here a note in the discussion topics about Igor's RocksDB SST file. And not sure if we'll be ready for Octopus or not. Have to see. Okay, so if Igor's stuff is ready, that is kind of a high impact thing, right? Especially if we can't get sharding in. If we can get sharding in, that will kind of give us, I think, some implicit better utilization of the flash drives for DB utilization, right? Because by sharding, we'll have lots of smaller level 1 and level 2 hierarchies, or multiple hierarchies with more level 1 and level 2s versus like one hierarchy with level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. But potentially Igor's changes will make that even better, or could still allow us to get better utilization even in the single hierarchy non-sharded case. So that might be something for us to think about in terms of RocksDB, the version that we're on, whether or not we're adding new commits to it, and how much testing we're getting out of it. All right, let's see. There's both the MDS cache memory limit tuning and the MON memory limit tuning PRs. I think both of those are still being worked on. Nothing much happening with the Messenger IOPS PR, or I think the IOU ring PR that's later in here as well. My op tracker event optimization PR, a couple weeks ago, I talked about that with Patrick, and I think we kind of came to an agreement on a way we could go forward with it. The idea here is that he really would like to keep string view as kind of the interface that we use for any kind of dynamic strings that we're keeping in the event. And I understand that that's reasonable. And then I think what we'll maybe kind of move toward is, instead of the current model where we mix static and dynamic event types that are represented by strings, instead we have those events become static, but with an optional dynamic like info field or something like that, that then could provide the same kind of dynamic information that we sometimes have in the op tracker events. That would be optional, and then would only have a performance impact when they're used. So I think hopefully that would give us kind of the best of all worlds, but that will just kind of take a little bit of a bigger change in the op tracker than what we have now. So yep, there's that. I still have my last cache binning PR that I haven't introduced yet. There's an outstanding one here, but that needs to be refactored and rebased. I think once we have 27705 or some version of that in, then it would make sense to get the last piece of this in. Igor, you're auto-tuning more aggressive on startup one. Do you still want to work on that? I can take kind of the bits of it that apply to the priority cache and just make a new PR form if you want, or if you want to, by all means.
Well, as far as I remember, this was mostly to fix some test cases I ran in the lab, so it's not very high priority thing. It
Okay.
probably doesn't impact production performance.
Okay. Do you want to keep that open, or should I close it, or do you want
Let's keep it open for a bit. I'll double check what's happening with test cases right now and either resurrect this or close it.
Okay, sounds good. There's a couple of other random things here. This ePoll events from user space. I think that's probably going to sit there for a while because it's all experimental. There's some Crimson stuff. Not a whole lot. Oh, this VLA's one. I think that kind of fell off the world edge of the world here. But does anyone have any interest in like reviewing that or helping to push that over the finish line?
Well, I spoke with Jesse last week or two, and he's at Canonical now and mentioned that he is interested in picking that back up. The rebase will probably be messy, but I think he's still around and willing to work on it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think Adam's message here to stop the stale bot from killing it is just about to expire again.
Yeah, we need to get that in. There was recently another bug that appeared due to a variable length array.
Yeah, I think it would be good if we could not let this one just kind of fall by the wayside. Okay, well, I think that's about it. Unless anyone has any other PRs that I forgot about on here. All right. So discussion topics. Setting the BlueFS alloc size to be the min alloc size. Neha or Josh, do you guys want to talk a little bit about kind of the reasoning behind this?
Yeah, sure. So this PR, the origin of it is due to some issues that we saw in the field with throughput allocator and the amount of fragmentation that was seen with throughput allocator. And the ultimate solution there was to move to bitmap allocator. But even with bitmap allocator, having these different allocation sizes for BlueStore and BlueFS is still a problem. Though some of the issues that throughput allocator had with how it's always it starts allocating from wherever it last allocated versus bitmap, which always starts from the beginning. That issue is resolved, but even when there is a situation that there aren't enough, the unit of size that BlueFS alloc size is currently, which is 1 MB, if there aren't enough 1 MB chunks left in BlueStore provide to BlueFS, then we'll still run into similar fragmentation issues. So that's kind of the brief overview of what the reason behind this PR is. So we now have backported bitmap allocator and are also making it the default for all versions, including Luminous. So the next step we thought would be to make both these allocation size equal. This is kind of an interim step before we actually get rid of both these different allocation sizes. Ideally, in Octopus, I believe we want to get rid of both these sizes and we'll have just one allocation size so that we don't have this problem at all. But for backportable reasons and for legacy releases, we want to just come up with this PR, which should solve some of the problems that we are having in the field. Josh, feel free to add anything that I may have missed.
I think that's a good background. Yeah, maybe you just want to describe what the PR does in particular.
Yeah, so the PR currently what it does is, so there are these two configuration values. One is BlueStore min alloc size, and it also has two different SSD and HDD versions of it. And then there is another configuration, which is BlueFS Alex size. Now, currently, both of them are independent. BlueStore min Alex size is smart to figure out whether it's running on a hard disk or SSD and figures out which value it should use for the min Alex size. But for BlueFS Alex size, we don't have any kind of mechanism to do that. It just uses a 1 MB default for all cases. So what this PR does is that it tries to figure out what value of min Alex size is being used by BlueStore, and it is going to default to that particular value. Only in the scenario when the user does not have a specific value specified in cephconf. If cephconf has this BlueFS Alex size to be 0, it's just going to default to whatever BlueStore's min Alex size is. And in case the user wants to explicitly override that, they can still do that by adding a particular value in cephconf. The only catch there is that currently the way the code works, and as Mark has described earlier, that there are restrictions as to what the lowest value of BlueFS Alex size can be. So the PR now also has a minimum Alex size that it binds BlueFS Alex size to, which is currently set to 16K, which is the default also for BlueStore min Alex size. So if the user ever tries to go below that by overriding through ceph.conf, the code will make sure that we never go below 16K. That is just to handle that scenario in the legacy BlueStore code, which doesn't handle lower than, I think the thing is that it doesn't handle lower than 8K, but I just decided to make the default minimum to 16K since that's the same as the SSD value that we are going to be using.
So Neha, I'm the one that actually chose the 16K min Alex size, so that's one of the reasons why I have kind of a strong opinion on this. When we decided that, it was very much based on the fact that at the time, BlueStore had a fair amount of encode and decode overhead when putting data in RocksDB. And we also just in general had enough metadata overhead in BlueStore that it was at the time quite a bit faster to use a 16K min Alex size with SSDs rather than a 4K min Alex size. The trade-off at the time was that anyone that was writing objects smaller than 16K would have space amplification. So like, for the RGW guys that are here, a 4K object size will actually use 16K, right? So plus whatever metadata overhead you also have. It was definitely a trade-off. And at the time, it was a trade-off that we wanted to make because we really wanted to showcase that BlueStore wasn't going to be slower than FileStore or small random I/O with RBD. Now, it's questionable whether or not we're actually significantly faster with a 16K min Alex size rather than a 4K one. Doing those extra while writes may actually be slower than eating the extra metadata and encoding overhead of having the 4K min Alex size. How this plays into having the BlueFS Alex size be the same as the min Alex size kind of just adds a more dimension to all of this. Because now it's kind of a question of, well, are you better off potentially eating the space amplification of small objects? Or are you better off potentially eating some space amplification for having fragmentation that you can't really work around for as far as being able to get more space out of the device? I don't know the answer to that. I have a suspicion that there's probably some balancing point between the two where you have like 1 megabyte is definitely probably not the right point to balance around, but whether or not having the min Alex size and the BlueFS alloc size be exactly the same, so you're not eating any space amplification that way, or if you are better off kind of allowing for a small min alloc size or a smaller min alloc size and a fairly small BlueFS alloc size, but still have a little bit of space amplification due to fragmentation. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is there, but I worry a little bit that we maybe have kind of made the decision in advance of actually finding any test results. If that kind of makes sense.
So I still a little unsure. So where is your concern that where are we binding ourselves, and where were we not binding ourselves earlier?
Well, it sounds like under your new PR, if I understand correctly, the way it would work is that we combine these two into one option, and that option cannot be set below 16K.
That option that option only holds true till 16K. Till 16K, BlueFS min alloc size and BlueFS alloc size and BlueStore min alloc size are one entity. Once you hit the 16K mark, they become independent identities.
I see. Okay.
We then say that we now again go back to our previous way of thinking, and we say that we are going to cap BlueFS alloc size at 16K no matter what. But you can go down with your BlueStore min alloc size to whatever the hell you want. You know, you can go back to 4K or 16K or whatever. So I don't see that we are binding people. I agree that the ideal case would be for people to be able to set it to whatever they like. But since the fact is for previous versions of the code, it's not possible to do that immediately. So until unless we have that solution in place, I don't see that this is going to necessarily be a hurdle for them. It's just going to be better.
Yes, sorry, Neha, I misunderstood how your PR worked. I'm sorry, I hadn't looked at the most recent changes. I thought that you were setting in a global boundary at 16K, not a boundary only on the BlueFS alloc size. So I retract my statement then. That's perfect.
That's fine. I hope that's clear now, at least.
Yeah. So the only then for me the only concern would be whether or not the performance hit with a 16K BlueFS alloc size is worth it. We've got some test results there. Some of our other changes like the cache refactor and also the thread count for RocksDB compaction, they give us big enough boosts that we can probably absorb this and still actually be faster than we were in current Nautilus. So we can probably absorb this if we really want to, but it does impact things.
Maybe worth pointing out that we're looking at changing this for Luminous too, where we're switching from stupid allocator to event allocator, and that transition alone should give us a big boost.
It's not as big of a boost always as you might think, or at least it's complicated, right?
Sure, it's very workload dependent.
Yeah, and how full you've got your drive already.
Yeah.
For Luminous, are we considering backporting any of the performance PRs that we've been backporting or talking about backporting to Nautilus or backporting to Nautilus?
I guess we haven't really discussed most of them for Luminous yet, since we're just getting them ready for Nautilus now. I think that would be a discussion for after the Nautilus.
The one that I think we are going to be backporting is the number of compaction threads to 2 rather than the default. That's one that I think is on the list so far.
Yes.
That's the one I was thinking of, actually, because it's so simple.
I mean, yeah,
in fact,
from a downstream perspective, I think there's a need to be more aggressive, but we can discuss it in other contexts once it's downstream.
Yeah, I think that one definitely deserves to be backported and is less disruptive. So In fact, we have users who are running with even higher values of that and have not seen any issues. So I don't see that being a problem.
I would. I know, Josh, you're fairly comfortable with it, but I think I would feel a little more comfortable if we backported the Nautilus version of RocksDB first. But it's okay if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I'm confident enough that FileStore's been using it, threads for however many years, so not worried about it.
Yeah, well, yeah. The thing I'm constantly concerned about is the random reports we've had of folks running into like random RocksDB corruption, which is the thing that every time I see it, I have a minor heart palpitations. But anyway.
Yeah, it's really tough to determine where those are coming from exactly and how frequent they are. Like they're fairly rare, right?
Yeah. So okay, yeah, so that would be the one that might have the biggest impact, because with the BlueFS Alex size being hit set small, it seems to be OMAP that's hit the hardest. So and that's what the increasing the RocksDB compaction threads helps the most. So that would be a potentially a good way to offset it, the hit from it. And maybe also I just started looking at it, but I've got more work to do. Certainly we can look at whether or not there's anything else we can do in the OSD to help minimize the impact of the smaller BlueFS allocation size. Maybe there's just a bit of code in there that we can tweak a little bit to at least provide some improvement.
Yeah, and like you were saying about the fragmentation coming from, or lack of space coming from metadata overhead from the analog size being 16K for small objects. I think further in the future, it's worth looking at, like you said, 4K analog size or BlueStore again, and because we are seeing lots of, like with RGW, especially very small object workloads where they are storing objects that are sized like 2 to 8K, and that's a lot of overhead.
Exactly. I've been thinking a lot about this through post Nautilus, and I even wonder if we should consider, if we're going to make this change, if we want to make that change at the same time.
I think we'll have to be more careful about performance testing for the 4K.
Yeah, the last time I looked at it, it was almost break even with 16K min Alex size, which was a big improvement over where we were like 2 years ago.
Interesting.
So maybe what I'll do is, as I'm doing this other testing and profiling to see if there's anything we can do to make the BlueFS BlueFS Alex size less impactful. Maybe simultaneously here I'll start looking at a 4K min Alex size and whether or not we can realistically change that at the same time or not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would require removing the restriction on BlueFS so that it could go down below 8K, the superblock. It takes a little bit extra work.
Oh no, I don't think we would, right? Because Niha's PR is going to, if I understand it right, as soon as you drop below 16K, it'll keep they'll be different. It'll keep the BlueFS Alex size at 16K, but the BlueStore min Alex size would be 4K then. Is that right, Niha?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right, I guess I'm thinking further in the future when we have a single allocator for both.
Yeah, that's the thing. So if we are able to have a single allocator, then we might want to get rid of the 8K boundary that we have, the super block limit that Josh was talking about.
But with your PR, we could still drop the min Alex size on SSDs to 4K and it'd be totally cool.
Yep.
Okay, I will try to get on top of that as a high priority here, so at least we've got at least we know, at least we've got some data on it, and then we can either decide if we want to try to take that on or punt.
Yeah, I mean, if it's very similar to 16K, then it's certainly worth it, I think.
Yeah, it's it's the trade-off of having more metadata versus those red hat log writes.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And did it have any impact in your prior testing with even with RBD workloads?
Yes. In our original testing, it was actually the RBD workload that kind of pushed us up to 16K, because when we were testing at 4K originally, we were slower than FileStore. And when we wanted to kind of make the initial splash with BlueStore, we didn't want it to look that way. So we were faster if we had a 16K min alloc size. But a lot of that was because at the time we still had was it BlueStore or NewStore even at that point? I think it was BlueStore, but it was our encoding overhead was high enough at that point, plus some just random other stuff, that having the increased amount of metadata really kind of bottlenecked the KV sync thread to the point where it was slow. Now we see the KV sync thread often not even pegging on random writes, which is kind of impressive, since we haven't. I don't think we've explicitly focused on that, but just all the random stuff people have been doing over the last 2 years seems to have, at least on the Inserta nodes, made it so that we tend to bottleneck on other stuff before the KV sync thread.
Cool. That sounds pretty promising then.
Yeah, it's still up there. It's still like in a lot of my tests, it's still like 70 to 80% of the time spent doing work, and the other time spent just waiting. But still, it's probably time to retest. Maybe with my double caching PR and possibly with the cache binning applied, but even without those, we could still look at it.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe the only other thing is, were there any other questions, Igor, from Stand Up? You were talking about some of your concerns. Are there any things we should talk about here regarding problems?
I think no. So my concern about possibility to bring some inconsistency in using config settings, it's still applicable for now, and well, so the new change doesn't bring any additional inconsistency here, so good enough, I think.
So when we do this, Josh and Neha, would it only apply to new OSD deployments, or would it change the settings on an existing one?
Technically, we wanted to work with the existing ones.
Yes, it's worth pointing out that the BlueFS or BlueStore is persisting its min alloc size. So this would be using that persisted size if it's already set.
So we would set the BlueFS alloc size to the existing min alloc size, and
as long as it's greater than equal to 16K.
Yeah. So anything to 16K or higher, depending on what that's set to.
Yep.
And that will be, we think that will be okay on existing OSDs that have already been using a 1 megabyte BlueFS alloc size.
I think so, because I think Adam has done some experiments with existing setups, and he went down to, I think, 256K, and he didn't see any issues. So I don't think, okay. But we are doing lots of testing to also make sure it doesn't cause any issues. So if there are problems, we should be able to find that out.
Well, Niha, one question here. As far as I understand, for existing, you don't change default BlueFS alloc size in config, which is 1 mega, or you change it? to 0.
I
So
changed it to 0 with my PR.
Yeah, okay. So for existing clusters, we will use new approach to calculate allocation size. Okay, good. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Any other comments or questions or thoughts on any of that? All right. Anyone want to bring up any other topics for this week? All right. Well, sounds good. So next week, it's possible we are going to get Sam Just in. He indicated that he might have some data ready to share about the internal latency of different points within the op path in BlueStore. So I haven't talked to him this week. He's out on vacation, but next week we may have a really interesting presentation from him. So I guess we'll hopefully see everyone next week. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks, Mark.
See you later.